I never imagined it could happen to me. When people talked about affairs, about betrayal, it felt like stories from a world far removed from my own. But now, sitting in the quiet of our living room, with the weight of the truth pressing down on my chest, I realized just how close that world had come. It started with a text message, innocuous at first glance. I wasn't looking for anything, but as her phone buzzed on the counter, I saw the preview pop up. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart hammered, and a strange numbness crept through my body. I stood there frozen, staring at the screen as the message disappeared into her lock screen. For a moment, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a friend, a joke taken out of context. Maybe it wasn't even her phone. It was an old habit of mine to doubt my instincts, to find excuses for things that didn't sit right. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. That night I couldn't sleep. She lay beside me, her breath steady, her face calm. I wanted to believe she was the woman I thought she was, the woman I had built my life with, trusted, and loved. But something had changed, a shadow had fallen over us that I couldn't ignore. The next day, I decided to confront her. Not with accusations, but with questions. "Is everything okay with us?" I asked over breakfast. She looked up, surprised, a little too quickly. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" Her answer was smooth, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or fear. I couldn't tell. I wanted to let it go. I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't shake the memory of that message. So later that day, when she left her phone unattended, I did something I never thought I'd do. I looked through it. I found more messages. Conversations with a man I didn't know, filled with flirtation, longing, and details that turned my stomach. They spoke of meetings, of moments stolen while I was at work or busy with the kids. Each word felt like a dagger, each message a betrayal of the life we had built together. When she came home, I didn't hide my discovery. I laid the phone on the table between us, open to the messages. She froze, her face pale. For a moment, she said nothing, and in that silence, everything was confirmed. "I never meant for this to happen," she said finally, her voice trembling. It just happened." Her words only deepened the ache in my chest. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But instead I sat there, numb. "Why?" was all I could manage. Her explanation was a tangled mess of excuses, feeling neglected, wanting excitement, and falling into something she claimed she didn't know how to stop. I listened, but I didn't feel the understanding she seemed to hope for. All I felt was betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. I don't know what comes next. The foundation of our relationship has been cracked, maybe beyond repair. Part of me wants to walk away, to leave this pain behind. But another part, the part that still remembers the woman I fell in love with, wants to believe we can fix this. For now, I take it one day at a time, searching for answers in a sea of questions, and hoping that one day, I'll find the strength to decide what to do. The days after the revelation were a blur of emotions. Anger, sadness, confusion, they all came crashing down in waves, leaving me gasping for air. I didn't know who to turn to, who to trust with this massive wound in my chest. Talking to friends or family felt impossible. The shame was too heavy, too raw. She tried to apologize, to explain herself more clearly, but every word felt hollow. "It didn't mean anything," she said one evening, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "It was a mistake." A mistake. As if something so deliberate, so calculated, could be reduced to a simple error. I wanted to lash out, to throw her words back at her, but I couldn't summon the energy. I felt drained, like her betrayal had siphoned away every ounce of strength I had. We started sleeping in separate rooms. I couldn't bear the thought of sharing a bed with her, not after what I'd discovered. Each night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I replayed our relationship in my mind, looking for clues I'd missed, signs of her unhappiness. Had I been blind? Too focused on work, on responsibilities, to see her slipping away? One evening, I decided I needed answers, not from her, but from him. It wasn't hard to find his number. She hadn't been as careful as she thought. My hands trembled as I dialed, unsure of what I'd say or how he'd respond. When he answered, his voice was calm, almost indifferent. "Who is this?" he asked. I told him. There was a long pause on the other end before he sighed. "Look, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. If it helps, it's over now. She told me it couldn't continue." His words stung, but they also brought a strange kind of clarity. This wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about both of them, and the choices they'd made to hurt me. "Do you even know what you've done?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Do you even care?" "I'm sorry," he said, but his tone didn't match the words. It felt rehearsed, as though he'd already decided this wasn't his problem anymore. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Talking to him didn't bring me peace, but it did solidify one thing in my mind: I couldn't let this define me. I couldn't let their actions dictate how I lived the rest of my life. The next morning, I told her we needed time apart. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I admitted, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "But I can't even think about forgiveness while we're still in this house together." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll go," she said softly. "I'll give you the space you need." Watching her pack her things was surreal. I wanted to stop her, to beg her to stay, even though I knew this was what I'd asked for. My heart ached as she closed the door behind her, leaving me alone in the silence of our home. Now, with the house empty, I've started to focus on myself for the first time in years. I'd begun therapy, trying to untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside me. Some days are better than others. There are moments when I feel almost normal, like the person I was before all of this. And then there are moments when the pain is so sharp, so overwhelming, it takes my breath away. People say time heals all wounds, but I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe some wounds don't heal. They just fade, becoming scars that remind us of what we've endured. What I do know is that I'm still here, still standing, and for now, that's enough. In the weeks after she left, I started to realize just how much of myself I had lost over the years. Not just because of her betrayal, but because of the way I had let our relationship define so much of my identity. Who was I, outside of being her husband? Outside of being the person who made sacrifices to keep everything running smoothly? The quiet in the house was deafening at first. It's strange how you can get so used to the background noise of another person's presence. The sound of footsteps, the clinking of dishes, even just the soft hum of someone breathing beside you. Without her, everything felt too still, too empty. I threw myself into work, partly to keep busy and partly to avoid the gaping void in my personal life. But even that didn't help much. I'd sit in meetings or stare at my computer screen, and my mind would wander back to the same questions. Why did this happen? Could I have stopped it? Was it my fault? Therapy became a lifeline. My therapist was kind but firm, helping me unpack the layers of guilt, anger, and sadness I was carrying. She reminded me that while I wasn't perfect, no one is, I wasn't responsible for her choices. "You can't control someone else's actions," she said during one session. "You can only control how you respond to them." Her words stuck with me. Slowly, I began to shift my focus away from what she had done and toward what I wanted my life to look like moving forward. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt like I was making progress, like I was finally starting to let go of the pain. Other days I felt like I was right back where I started, drowning in a sea of resentment and unanswered questions. Then one day, out of the blue, she called me. "I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice hesitant. "And I need you to know how sorry I am. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back, but I still love you. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this." Her words hit me like a tidal wave. Part of me wanted to believe her, to cling to the hope that we could rebuild what we'd lost. But another part of me, the part that had spent weeks wrestling with the betrayal, wasn't so sure. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "Love isn't enough if the trust is gone." She didn't argue. Instead, she said something that surprised me. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. But I'm willing to do the work, even if it takes years. Even if you decide you don't want to be with me, I need to show you that I can be better. Her vulnerability was disarming. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had believed in before everything fell apart. But I wasn't ready to make any decisions, not yet. We agreed to take things slowly. She started going to therapy on her own, and we began meeting once a week to talk, not about the affair, but about us, about our shared history and whether there was anything left to salvage. Some days, those conversations felt like a step forward. Other days, they felt like a painful reminder of how much we had lost. I still don't know where this road will lead. Maybe we'll find a way back to each other, or maybe this will be the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, one where we go our separate ways. What I do know is that I'm not the same person I was before. I've learned to value myself, to set boundaries, and to demand honesty and respect in my relationships. Whatever happens, I'll carry those lessons with me. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to start healing.